Discover the amazing last days of lost civilizations, 5 shocking truths that transformed history. Emma's hands trembled as she dusted off the fragile pages of the tattered journal. The attic, filled with the scent of mothballs and faded memories, felt more suffocating than ever. She was a mere art studio manager in her rural Ohio town, wrestling with responsibilities that seemed to anchor her to the past, caring for her single mother, maintaining the status quo, and aspiring for something greater that had begun to slip through her fingers. The tales within the journal, lost civilizations, extraordinary fates, called to her like sirens, beckoning her to leave the confines of her ordinary life behind. But the weight of expectation pressed down on her chest. She longed to delve into the history her great-grandfather had documented, yet she felt an internal tug of war, the need to honor her family's legacy against the looming shadow of her working-class background. As she leafed through the aged pages, a thrill coursed through her veins, quickly followed by a snare of doubt. Was she capable of navigating the elitist realms of academia? Would she only be regarded as just another dreamer lost in the chatter of scholars, her insights drowned in the condescending waves of privilege? As irrational as the thought was, the sinking feeling intensified. She would stand on the shoulders of giants, ones who had paved the way for her to untangle the injustices buried in time. But would she be dismissed? Emma felt her stomach twist with anxiety. Some part of her knew that every moment spent knee-deep in dusty history compiled only made her more of a fraud. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. A familiar gnawing in her gut transformed into anger. The competitive historian, who publicly questioned her dedication to the field, turned her hard-earned dreams into toys for his ridicule. How could she protect the revelations she had unearthed while he tossed around insinuations that her upbringing rendered her less capable? A storm brewed in her mind, swirling with conflicting thoughts of self-doubt and fiery determination. Clenching her jaw, she could almost hear her grandmother's voice echoing in the background. You have to decide what kind of woman you want to be. But even as she grasped the journal tighter, another wave of fear crashed over her. Would she betray her heritage by claiming it for herself?
The ancestors she sought to honor were entwined in a dance of legacy, both haunting and beautiful. Yet she could feel the pressure to conform crushing her spirit. Emma's heart raced as she braced for what lay ahead. The thought of her family's story unraveling, the secrets it cradled, loomed greater than any personal victory. Here, teetering between a potential breakthrough and the specter of failure, she understood the truth. The weight of her lineage posed an unbearable challenge. Would she rise to embrace her birthright, or would she falter under the expectations and doubts that painted her reality? As she stared into the shadows of the attic, a silent promise surged within her. These next steps could either illuminate her path or plunge her deeper into the shadows of her own making. Emma felt it, the unmistakable pull of destiny, as she braced herself for the storm ahead. The scent of aged parchment mingled with the musty air of the attic, forming a cocoon that sheltered Emma in her moment of reckoning. Clutching her great-grandfather's journal, she felt the gravity of its history pulling her deeper into a realm where her dreams collided with the limitations she imposed on herself. She knew she could no longer shrink into the shadows. It was time to face her resolve and lay the foundation for her own narrative. With a deep breath, Emma unfurled the faded pages, scanning lines that whispered forgotten stories.
They ignited something within her, an ache to rise above her current existence, to claim her narrative and intertwine it with the legacy of those before her. Could she sift through the shame that had become part of her identity, the nagging voice of her upbringing that echoed uncertainty? Could she transform her fear into a force that propelled her forward rather than weighed her down? The following days became an obsessive blur of research, her days spent immersed in the stories of ancient cities and their cultures. Each afternoon, after work, she would sit at her kitchen table, papers strewn around her like petals scattered by the wind. Flashes rang through her mind of forgotten truths, her fingers deftly untangling the threads of loss and resilience. Emma recognized a flicker of clarity within the chaos. These were not just stories, they were fragments of a larger picture that held significance and purpose. However, those weeks also bore the weight of critical decisions. She began drafting a proposal for a research project that extended beyond the journal, aiming to explore not just her great-grandfather's findings, but also the broader implications they carried for marginalized voices buried within historical narratives. Each paragraph flowed with intent, yet every word became a battleground where her fear and hope wrestled for dominance. But the moment doubt threatened to seize her once more, Emma would close her eyes and visualize standing before a panel, articulating the importance of her work. She would shine a light onto the lives and experiences erased by the passage of time. That image, the spirited belonging, banished the ghosts of inadequacy. Yet in the quiet moments, whispers of skepticism lingered. What right did she have to reclaim these narratives? Doubt manifested as she submitted her proposal at a local university's summer research program. The prospect felt monumental, but there lay a gravelly path ahead. Emma had every reason to expect rejection. She'd seen too many dreams crushed by the indifferent jaws of academia. Yet each instance served to galvanize her resolve. No more complacency. This journey mirrored not just a quest for knowledge, but also a revolution of the self. As she awaited the committee's decision, she filled the void with discussions with the select few who had been her greatest supporters. They were her anchors, offering insights and helping to surface her doubts into conversations steeped in hope. Emma realized the true battle lay in holding her ground against dismissive voices, both external and internal. Every night she would look at the moonlit sky and whisper to herself, "You belong here." Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. The email bearing the university's decision glowed in her inbox, every second stretching into eternity. Did she have the courage to click open? Hope and apprehension coalesced into a singular heartbeat as she summoned the fortitude to unveil the words within. Emma's finger hovered over the screen, poised to dissolve either into despair or possibility. But would she find affirmation in the pursuit of her dream, or was she destined once more to fall into the shadows of self-doubt? Every pulse of time felt amplified as Emma finally braved a click of the mouse, her heart thundering with each word unfurling on her screen. Acceptance. The word shimmered before her like a beacon breaking through dense fog. "Congratulations," it began, and with it a wave of validation crested over her, an unrelenting tide of hard-won achievement. Yet the joy was quickly eclipsed by a new wave of uncertainty. As quickly as the exhilaration hit, she felt the heavy weight of expectations settle on her shoulders, as tangible as the journal she had held so tightly. The work ahead would surpass her solitary dreams. It demanded tenacity and the willingness to confront the truths she sought to excavate. The next day, shielded by caffeine-induced bravado and the buoyancy of her recent success, Emma entered the university's expansive library, a labyrinth adorned with knowledge. Each aisle whispered secrets, urging her to plunder their wisdom. She recalled her intentions to illuminate the marginalized narratives that had been buried deep, stories silenced by history's relentless march. But as she rummaged through texts, her motivation wavered under the complexities of her task. Each book seemed to question her authority to speak for others. Who was she to represent voices she had never lived? The enormity of her responsibility weighed heavily. This dilemma gnawed at her, a persistent reminder of her insecurities. A voice, small yet piercing, echoed her past, underscoring her lack of credentials. Emma needed a plan that anchored her further away from self-doubt. She sought mentorship from professors who had pioneered research into similar territories. That afternoon, Emma nervously approached Dr. Mitchell, whose work she had admired from afar, her heartbeat hammering as she convinced herself that rejection was better than lingering in anonymity. Dr. Mitchell, she introduced herself, as he looked up from an array of scattered papers, intense curiosity flashing across his features. A short conversation morphed into an exploration of her ideas, revealing a spontaneous fire in her voice. She pitched her project with a fervor that felt foreign yet exhilarating. Each word was a step, building upon her burgeoning confidence. "That is intriguing," he mused, peering over his glasses. "You know, reclaiming these narratives is imperative, but you will need to approach it delicately. There is a heavy history that cannot be overstated." His words resonated, prompting reflections on the ethical implications of her work. They weren't just distant stories. They were lives entwined with heartache and legacy. Emma felt the gravity of those lives resting on her. This was no longer merely about her ambition. It was about honoring their truths, and the thought both terrified and emboldened her. Days merged into weeks as she plunged into her research. She found solace in her projects, but feared the inevitable confrontation with her findings. Some days she grappled with systemic injustices that riddled the narratives she sought to reclaim, and other days she marveled at the resilience that bubbled forth from them. Each revelation cracked a layer of her uncertainty, allowing her understanding to deepen while simultaneously nurturing her sense of obligation. Yet, despite her fervor, an impending presentation loomed, a chance to showcase months of labor before a panel of critical scholars. With every passing day, the weight of impending scrutiny stifled her courage. What if her understanding was convoluted? What if they questioned her capacity, deemed her unworthy? Would her efforts to reclaim narratives collapse under the gaze of the learned? Emma faced a pivotal moment as the day approached, a crucial chance to step beyond self-imposed limitations. She needed to confront the specter of doubt head-on, or risk allowing it to swallow her ambition whole. Determination churned within her, demanding action. But before she could wrestle with her apprehensions, a message pinged on her phone. The sender was a prominent figure in the field, an author whose book had illuminated the very histories Emma sought to explore. The subject? A collaboration proposal. Her heart raced. Could this be the opportunity to not only validate her research, but also to elevate the platform from which she would speak? As thoughts turned turbulent, Emma felt a mix of elation and dread. What would it require of her? Was she, after all, ready to stand side by side with her inspirations? The question lingered, a palpable tension tethered to her potential as she prepared to answer within the confines of a single decision. Emma stared at her phone, her finger hovering over the screen, the weight of the decision nearly unbearable. The collaboration was an undeniable affirmation, but it also loomed like a specter, whispering doubts into her ear. Questions plagued her thoughts. Was she equipped to tackle this partnership? Was she prepared to contribute meaningfully? Or would she always be just one step behind? Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself why she entered this field. Her commitment was to elevate stories, to bring forth lives that had been dimmed by history. Perhaps this collaboration was the very chance to do so on a larger stage, to gain legitimacy and insight that could reshape her understanding. Over the next few days, Emma wrestled with her choice. Her excitement about the opportunity blurred with anxiety. The academic articles piled high on her desk seemed both like invitations to insight and barriers in her pursuit. She clawed through them, scribbling notes, pouring herself into research with zeal, yet cautious of the shadows of doubt lingering nearby. Each night, Emma replayed conversations with Dr. Mitchell in her head. His words about approaching narratives delicately resonated with her as she delved deeper into the responsibilities awaiting her. How could she write authentically without warranting her position? How did one balance telling a story with the dignity and respect it deserved? On the day she needed to reply to the proposal, Emma found the walls of her apartment closing in. She paced, feeling the floors quiver beneath her as though they too were aware of her impending decision. The sunlight poured in through the window, and the stillness felt pregnant with possibilities and fears. She finally sank into her chair, confrontationally glancing at the email draft. Her fingers trembled as she typed, allowing her thoughts to flow out without obstruction. With each sentence, the resolve built within her. She addressed the author candidly, laying out her vision while recognizing their shared objective. The words became a catharsis, an unearthing of her suppressed determination. Once she hit send, an inexplicable mix of relief and tension washed over her. The decision had been made, yet the weight of the unknown held firm. Days passed slowly as she awaited a response, each moment stretching into hours. Would she receive acceptance or rejection? In those waiting days, Emma leaned into her research. She began to engage with her findings in a more profound way, analyzing not just the facts, but the emotional threads that wove these stories together. Stripping the historical context to articulate human experiences, grief, joy, strength became her primary objective. She knew that the authenticity of her work depended on connecting those threads. Then a notification chimed. The author had responded. The anticipation shot through her like wildfire, palpable and electric. With a racing heart, she opened the email. As she scanned the words, a smile broke across her face. A collaborative partnership was in motion, along with a proposal to present jointly at an upcoming conference. Yet, even as excitement bloomed, the back of her mind gnawed at her. This was not just an opportunity, but a larger stage which magnified every insecurity. The prospect of sharing the podium with someone she idolized brought thrill, but also dread. How would she measure up? The echo of her questions returned. Was she truly ready? Emma felt a familiar tide of doubt creep in, threatening to offset the stride she had made. It was a moment poised between triumph and trepidation, perhaps foreshadowing an inevitable confrontation with those fears. As she pondered her next steps, she understood that real growth often lay just outside the boundaries of comfort. The conference approached, a looming precipice upon which she would either thrive or falter. Facing the reality of her impending presentation, Emma realized she had to confront not just the audience, but also herself, her fears, her insecurities, and her worthiness to stand among giants. A spark ignited within her. She resolved to lean into her strengths and transform this experience into a conduit for change. But before the first slide could be prepared, another message flashed on her screen, a colleague's inquiry about something equally as daunting. Emma's heart raced again, bubbling with anticipation and uncertainty. The moment had come to face more than just her audience. It was time to confront her internal landscape, and she couldn't help but wonder what this new revelation would unearth. Emma clicked on the message, a sharp breath escaping her lips. The screen revealed a request from a colleague asking for her insights on a project centered around the same themes she was now exploring, the lost narratives of civilizations. A wave of exhilaration blended with panic as she considered her response. Should she engage? Would she spread herself too thin? Taking a moment, Emma paused her racing thoughts, drawing from her research on emotional threads. She understood this was an opportunity to both contribute to a distinct project and hone her own narrative skills. She quickly wrote back, expressing her enthusiasm while setting clear boundaries. It was both empowering and daunting to stand firm, knowing she still had her own commitments to honor. Over the next few days, her inbox filled with further inquiries and invitations from colleagues eager to share their ideas. Emma felt a mix of pride at her growing recognition and a suffocating pressure to match expectations. Each message felt like a test. Could she juggle multiple projects without losing herself? Emma resolved to prioritize her time. She crafted a detailed schedule, allowing blocks for her collaborative presentation while ensuring she could delve deeply into the topics her colleagues were tackling. As she committed to this plan, an unexpected clarity emerged. She learned to separate noise from focus, prioritizing what aligned with her goals. Yet another specter of self-doubt loomed. What if she overcommitted? The thought of letting colleagues down tormented her late at night. Was she being too ambitious? It felt important to confront this fear head-on. Instead of shying away, she reached out to Dr. Mitchell, seeking guidance on balancing her newfound responsibilities. Their conversation was revealing. He recounted his journey and the pivotal moments when he took risks, shedding light on the importance of saying no to some opportunities to cultivate the ones that truly resonated. His words offered balm to Emma's anxieties. Emulating his process, she began to scrutinize her days. In moments of reflection, she examined how well her commitments aligned with her core objective: to elevate stories that resonated with the human experience. As the conference date neared, Emma utilized every opportunity to practice her presentation. She enlisted friends as mock audiences, brave enough to provide criticism. The process of standing in front of them, articulating her thoughts, exposed vulnerabilities she hadn't acknowledged. Their feedback became a lifeline, shaping not only her slides, but refining her overall narrative direction. The deeper she delved into her materials, the more she found herself absorbed in revelations. Each historical account wove together universal human emotions that transcended time and place. She recognized this was not merely about presenting data, but connecting, creating a bridge between histories and contemporary experiences. Amid all this preparation, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if, in striving for connection, she lost her own voice? The fear of being overshadowed loomed large. As she prepared to step into the unfamiliar light, she knew she needed to reclaim her narrative as a singular, powerful voice within the collective resonance of human stories. The morning of the presentation dawned, sunlight flooding her living room with a warm glow. Yet Emma felt the chill of anticipation coat her spine. She looked around, gathering her notes and materials, her thoughts racing. Would she be able to convey her vision authentically? Could she uphold the dignity of the voices she intended to represent while also asserting her own? Those questions tugged at the edges of her resolve as she reminded herself of Dr. Mitchell's wisdom about risking comfort for growth. This was an artistic submission to the world, a chance to confront both her fears and aspirations. However, before she could step out, a new email notification blinked and demanded her attention, bringing with it a twist that would once again shift the axis of her internal landscape. Cautiously, she opened it, bracing for what revelation awaited her. The subject line was jarring, like a sharp chime in the quiet of her anticipation. Emma's fingers hovered above the keyboard as she clicked to open the email. The words gleamed before her like a mockery of her imposter anxieties, promising shocking truths, yet standing as a testament to the very narratives she was trying to elevate. As she read, her initial intrigue morphed into disbelief. A list of bold claims outlined the transformative impacts of various civilizations, but as she read deeper, familiarity tore at her confidence. These amazing revelations presented a sanitized version of history, devoid of the nuanced complexities she was dedicated to exploring. They glossed over the very emotions she sought to unearth: pain, loss, and resilience, replaced with dramatic headlines designed for clicks rather than true understanding. Emma's heart raced, not from excitement, but from indignation. This was precisely the kind of reductionist thinking she feared within her own work. The email's tone felt condescending. It aimed to capture attention at the expense of authenticity. She questioned her engagement with the project she had committed to. Was she going to be one of those professionals creating sensational narratives, or a genuine seeker of truth? She slammed the laptop shut, her breath coming quicker now, swirling around the dichotomy of her aspirations and fears. If she continued down this path, would she become complicit in distorting the very histories she sought to illuminate? Emma felt a surge of resolve. She refused to be part of this trend. But how could she firmly state her values in an environment that clung to sensationalism? With newfound determination, she grabbed a notepad. She needed to delineate her vision clearly, not just for her upcoming presentation, but for herself. The delineation of her core beliefs emerged in elegant strokes as she brainstormed. Each line spelled out her commitment to honesty, depth, and the human experience that articulated history. She was documenting the guiding principles that shaped her narrative: gratitude to those whose stories deserve to be told in full, complexity in their details and experiences. Through this creative clarity, Emma unearthed an unexpected layer of her own strength. It wasn't just about conveying what she felt and thought. It was about claiming a space where those lost narratives could be heard fully, without distortion. She began outlining specific examples of civilizations that illustrated her message. Their resilience, capacity for love amid conflict, and insights into human nature became touchstones for her work, ensuring that everything she presented connected back to her core objectives. The act of writing became cathartic. Each stroke reaffirmed her conviction that authenticity would resonate more than any headline. Yet beneath this resolve lurked another sensation, an unsettling, familiar feeling of self-doubt creeping back in. Was her approach too idealistic? As the clock ticked ominously, the tension mounted. She paused, taking a deep breath, contemplating her earlier discussions with Dr. Mitchell. It was time to embrace the discomfort rather than yield to it. In her pursuit to stay true to herself, perhaps she needed to challenge norms, even if it meant standing alone. The moment of truth was coming. Her presentation awaited. But more than a mere show, it was her opportunity to redefine narrative, to shatter expectations. As she prepared to push the laptop open once more, a corner of her mind twisted with anticipation. Would her voice be enough to cut through the clamor of exaggerations? With each moment passing, Emma felt the weight of her decision intensifying. The true challenge lay not only in articulating her insights, but in facing those who thrived on sensationalism. The world desired ease. She was about to deliver substance. And as she finally opened her laptop, an email notification chimed once again, a message from the colleague who had originally prompted her involvement in the project. With her heart in her throat, she clicked to view it. This could change everything. Emma's heart pounded as the email loaded, revealing an insipid headline that threatened to deflate her newly forged resolve. This was not just an invitation to succumb to sensationalism. It felt like a potential derailment of everything she had fought to understand and convey. The colleague's tone felt unrelentingly optimistic, promising a radical shift in perception, perhaps even enticing the audience with empty praises. Static surged through her mind, battling the clarity she had unearthed only moments before. With a controlled exhale, she delved deeper into the email. The body showcased a plan for a viral marketing strategy aimed at maximizing viewer engagement. It was littered with suggestions for attention-grabbing titles and superficial bullet points, as if distilling the essence of entire cultures into mere appetizers. Emma could feel the knot in her stomach tighten. This was not the integrity she vowed to uphold. The contradiction gnawed at her instincts. Was she destined to become a part of this world, one where nuances and depths were sacrificed for clicks and likes? If so, what did that mean for her identity as an academic and storyteller? Her internal dialogue amplified as she countered. Yes, but going against the norm requires courage and conviction. A shaky pulse of confidence tried to ignite in her once again, coaxed by the potential for change.
And then she paused. The email glimmered on her screen, each line shouting the same defeatist message: values do not matter, numbers do. That was the very reason Emma had found her way into this field, the belief that every narrative mattered and had the right to be heard fully, free from the tyranny of marketing strategies. She could feel the collective weight of all those whose stories deserved dignity, and their voices whispered encouragement. Emma's resolve shifted from a tremor of uncertainty to something more resolute. She began typing, not a response to the email, but notes to herself, poised to confront this marketing strategy head-on. She drafted bullet points that highlighted genuine historical narratives instead, stories of cultures that faced devastating challenges yet thrived in resilience, love, and hope. With each word, she shared her commitment to reject superficiality, reclaiming her narrative autonomy in this dissonant landscape. She pressed send on her message to her colleague, outlining her intentions for the presentation. I want to explore genuine connections and undermine the false equivalence of sensationalism, she concluded boldly. Each stroke liberated her spirit further, embracing her own complexity as part of that genuine pursuit. It marked a pivotal moment, the decision to engage with the content in its presentation, ensuring it reflected truth rather than illusion. Even as she anticipated the potential fallout from her candor, Emma felt an exhilarating freedom unfolding within her. This was an awakening. She was stepping into her role as an advocate for authenticity, using her voice to challenge the very norms that threatened to drown her aspirations. In those transformative moments, she experienced a revelation. She possessed an ability to synthesize profound historical facts with enthralling storytelling. That skill could shift narrations from mere entertainment into deeply introspective journeys. It was time to embrace this power fully, leaning into her narrative gifts. As she gathered her thoughts for the presentation, the challenge at hand felt daunting yet exhilarating. There would be opposition. Critics would emerge, possibly even her own colleagues who thrived on eye-catching headlines. The stakes were high. But Emma now understood that the discomfort she faced was only a precursor to the developments awaiting her. With the room set for her presentation, she stood before the audience, anticipation swirling within her chest. The moment was close. The time had come to face the expectations of others and redefine what success could look like. She adjusted her notes nervously, contemplating how this first step would lead her into uncharted territory. And as she caught a glimpse of her colleague's doubtful expression in the audience, a fire ignited in her soul. Would standing steadfast in her principles win the respect of her peers or isolate her further? Emma inhaled deeply, ready to confront the world, a test not just of her profession, but of her very identity. Would she emerge a champion of authenticity or succumb to the enticing trap of reductionist sensationalism? The answer lay just beyond the threshold of her determination. The room buzzed with tension as Emma faced the audience, their expectant eyes narrowing into disinterested glares, some already attached to their devices. It felt as though she were stepping onto a battlefield instead of a stage. The glitzy title flashed in her mind as she squared her shoulders. Her heart pounded, but with purpose. This was her chance, not only to present, but to uphold her values against an encroaching tide of superficiality. Grappling with butterflies, she cleared her throat, letting the silence stretch before speaking. Today, I want to share stories that transcend mere headlines and offer authentic lessons from history. The words bubbled out with a firmness she didn't anticipate, flickering with the hope that the audience would lean in, eager to listen. As she began detailing the lives of those long-forgotten cultures that had persevered against unimaginable odds, she noticed slight nods from a few faces in the crowd. Perhaps she could break through the wall of skepticism. With each gripping narrative, she leaned into her storytelling prowess, intertwining poignant details that highlighted the strength and wisdom within these historical contexts. She was no longer merely talking, she was performing an act of reclamation, restoring dignity to the untold stories that deserved to thrive beyond a clickbait encapsulation. Her audience shifted from disinterest to engagement. A man in the back leaned forward, intrigued. A couple of women exchanged glances, their expressions softening. The longer she spoke, the more the air in the room charged with a different energy, one of curiosity and respect. But just as she allowed herself to savor that interaction, she caught sight of her colleague, the very architect of the viral strategy, folded arms and a scowl etched across his face. Emma's stomach twisted again. Was she truly alienating herself? Each glance at his expression injected a doubt that threatened to unravel her newly solidified confidence. Was bold honesty worth this potential isolation? Emma pressed on, reminding herself that authenticity often comes at the cost of approval. Her heart, steadying beneath the weight of her convictions, spurred her to push through the ensuing unease. She accentuated the power of history, illustrating how these narratives still speak to contemporary challenges, resonating in ways that mere numbers and sensationalism would never capture. As she wrapped up, an unexpected swell of gratitude surged within her. She had not only rediscovered her voice, but she had weaponized it, armored in fervent authenticity. The final echoes of her last sentence hung in the air, pending response. The applause was soft but genuine, reflecting an initial understanding and appreciation of her stance. Emma couldn't help but grin, feeling a renewed surge of confidence. Perhaps she had done more than simply present. She had planted a seed of curiosity and respect for authenticity. But as she stepped down, she already felt the precarious nature of her newfound alignment. The backlash was inevitable. She returned to her seat, eyes flitting nervously to her colleague, who remained stonily expressionless. A confrontation loomed. Emma knew the confrontation would not just be words exchanged, but a clash of ideologies. If she wanted to preserve her commitment to truth, she needed to prepare her next moves carefully, focusing on potential ramifications for her career within these tightly controlled narratives. The moment of truth lingered in the tension vibrating from her colleague, a conversation she anticipated with equal parts dread and determination. Would she fortify her position, or would the forces of tradition sway her once again? The future of her career lay in that conversation. Chilled silence enveloped Emma as she settled into her seat, her heart still racing from the adrenaline of the presentation. The audience's reaction echoed in her ears, applause that barely broke the surface of applause she had yearned for, yet it felt significant in its authenticity. But there lingered the thorn of her colleague's disapproval, a reminder that her bold stance might not only cost her professional alliances, but could also endanger her career trajectory. As she gathered her notes, bracing for the impending confrontation, Emma's mind spiraled. She replayed the affirming nods for the audience, clinging to those moments of connection like lifebuoys amidst a sea of doubt. Despite the unease brewing beneath the surface, a flicker of determination ignited within her. Emma, her colleague's voice sliced through the post-presentation haze, abrupt and brittle. She looked up, meeting his hard gaze, as the expression on his face suggested that he was preparing for battle. "We need to talk." Sitting across from him, she felt exposed, a distorted mirror reflecting her own insecurities back at her. "I think you went a bit too far. "You defied the purpose of today's agenda," he stated curtly, folding his arms tighter, accentuating the metaphorical barrier between them. She swallowed hard, her palms sweating slightly against the wooden table. "But I think authenticity is what we need now, not just numbers and sensational headlines. We have a responsibility to tell stories that matter," she countered, her voice steadier than she felt. Each word was a strategic move, not only to defend her stance, but also to assert her evolving identity within this industry. For a moment, he maintained a steely silence, and she felt the wake of his scrutiny. It bore down as she grappled with the implications of his next words. Would he brush aside her conviction as idealism, or embrace it as a necessary shift? "Your personal growth is commendable, but this isn't a platform for self-expression. Our investors expect a specific type of content, and this is risky," he finally said, his voice dropping to an incredulous whisper, as though revealing a secret. Emma's mind whirred, processing his fears of loss, of change, or an unfamiliar territory. She recognized that she was at a crossroads, backed by a growing resolve that her journey towards authenticity resonated beyond the confines of investor expectations. "Risk is part of innovation," Emma replied, her pulse quickening, not out of fear, but exhilaration. "What's at stake is so much greater than clicks. It's about truth in storytelling. We can't shackle our narratives to keep them palatable. If we do, we risk losing our audience's trust altogether." The challenge hung between them, electric and charged. Emma felt galvanizing strength rising within, the quiet echo of her presentation replaying in her head, the applause she finally earned. She was willing to stand her ground, come what may. Her colleague's expression hardened, and tension crackled like a live wire. "You're playing with fire, Emma. If you continue on this path, you may find yourself alone in your pursuit." "Perhaps I'd prefer that over being tethered to a lie." The words came out sharper than intended, sharpening the divide further. She braced for his response, the fear of isolation intertwining with the intoxicating thrill of breaking free. As the moment held thick with unresolved tension, Emma's mind raced with possibilities. Would she choose to navigate this precarious professional landscape alone, or find allies among those stirred by authenticity? The stakes were high, and the line was drawn. The next steps loomed large. Would she silently retreat into conformity, or carve a new path built on truth and connection? Emma's heart raced with resolve as she considered her options. The dialogue wasn't just symbolic, it was a battle for the future she envisioned for herself in this challenging world. And so, the question reverberated within her. Was it time to escalate the confrontation, push for broader changes, or focus on her internal quest for identity amidst chaos? Time would reveal her choices, but the answer was a slithering whisper in her mind, urging her to embrace both the risks and the truths that shaped her narrative. Next, she realized she would need a plan, not just to defend her stance, but a strategy to galvanize others who shared her conviction. The moment of alliance was at hand, and perhaps the real conflict had barely begun. As Emma emerged from the intense debate with her colleague, she felt inexorably changed, an alchemic transformation from uncertainty to fierce affirmation. No longer could she bend her values to accommodate the narrow confines of tradition, especially when the weight of her colleagues' expectations clashed with the authenticity she intended to uphold. With clarity thawing her prior hesitations, she recognized that her journey was not just personally significant, it resonated with a purpose that demanded to be shared. The following weeks became a battlefield of introspection and planning. The collaboration project loomed over her like a daunting cloud, but instead of retreating into fear, Emma devised a strategic vision that blended her research with visceral narratives. She reached out to colleagues who had shown genuine interest in her passion for authentic storytelling, hoping to cultivate an alliance built on shared aspirations, individuals who appreciated the deeper truths of history over sensational headlines. During lunch breaks, Emma engaged her fellow researchers about the intrinsic value of narrative integrity. What if we transformed our approach? Let's not chase clicks, let's chase truth, she pitched during casual discussions. Their eyes sparked with curiosity, and soon her initiative gained traction. Together, they formed a coalition committed to reclaiming lost narratives in their diverse projects, history firmly entwined with purpose. As she aligned her team's mission with the voices of the marginalized she sought to honor, Emma felt that inner fire grow. Each new revelation and story shared felt like weaving a tapestry, a tribute to resilience amid adversity. Her confidence swelled, along with her capacity to confront external skepticism as well as her internal critics. Finally, the day dawned for her presentation at the collaborative conference. Emma stood backstage, nerves pulsating through her as she rehearsed her approach once more. This was not merely an opportunity to showcase her research, it was an invitation to inspire genuine conversations about historical accountability. She recalled the genuine applause from her earlier presentation, feeling empowered by the possibility of replicating that momentum on this broader platform. Stepping onto the stage, Emma felt the warmth of stage lights embracing her, a stark contrast to the chilling doubts of her past. The audience, a mix of skeptics and supporters, sat in silence as she began her narrative. With each story she shared, she integrated historical facts layered with emotional truths, unraveling the complexities that lay beneath the gloss of societal expectations. The enduring legacies of civilizations, she declared, are often interwoven with their struggles. It is our responsibility to portray them whole, not skewed by sensationalist notions. She watched their faces shift as her words resonated, sparking a palpable interest. Even the hardened expressions in the audience began to soften, hinting at a budding appreciation for the authenticity she sought to uphold. As she concluded, the applause swelled, a crescendo of affirmation that rippled through the room. But more than just applause, she found something deeply validating, the sense that she had planted the seeds of change. The thought of integrity redefining academic standards swirled within her like a gentle breeze of hope. A glimpse of her colleague's furrowed brow slowly transformed into reluctant admiration, sparking an unexpected dialogue following her speech. In the days after the conference, Emma received a flood of messages. Colleagues admired her courage and expressed interest in collaborating further. Each message felt like a checkmark against the doubts she once nurtured. At that moment, she became more than a name within the academic community. She emerged as an empowered voice challenging the status quo, an advocate for those previously lost amidst cheap headlines. Stepping into her office one day, a new email notification caught her eye. It was a proposal from a prominent journal inviting her to write a piece on the intersection of authenticity in narratives and historical context. Her heart raced, rushing with the knowledge that her voice had gained significant traction. This wasn't just a personal victory, it was recognition of her pivotal transition from manager to narrative architect, affirming her credibility within the field. Moreover, the true transformation within Emma extended beyond the realm of academia. Personal relationships flourished. Her mother beamed with pride, recognizing the strength Emma had cultivated and held fast to her familial roots. Emma, too, learned to embrace the complexities of her heritage, owning them as the very fabric of her identity. She was not just reclaiming history, she was forging her narrative with courage, passion, and integrity. In her quiet moments, the attic's scent of mothballs no longer suffocated her, it inspired her. What once felt like a burden, the weight of family expectations, now served as a wellspring of strength. Emma stood poised at the precipice of a new journey, not only for herself, but for those ancestral voices she sought to honor. This victory was far from the end of her story. Rather, it was merely a turning point, a solid affirmation of her place in the annals of history, where her voice, convictions, and values would echo for many stories yet to be told. Now that you've witnessed the incredible journey of Emma, you need to subscribe now to catch more exclusive emotional stories that inspire. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and be a part of our community. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep our connection alive. Comment below your reactions and theories about this profound ending, as only true fans of personal overcoming stories know the importance of supporting our journey together.